Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a splendid new Baroque opera by Marais Ariane et Bacchus, also known as Bacchus and Ariadne, if you happen to like Roussel ballets or, well, Richard Strauss's opera doesn't get to the Bacchus part. I mean, she's so famous. She pops up in every opera known to mankind. Well, no, not really, but lots of them. I mean, she spins a lot in mythology, but the story is that, in this opera anyway, is that after she's abandoned by Jason, remember, he goes off and leaves her on Naxos, that's Ariadne auf Naxos, Bacchus falls in love with her, and she has a bunch of kids, and eventually she gets killed in a variety of ways. Perseus kills her by showing her the head of Medusa in his war against Dionysus or Bacchus or whoever it is. That's one way. And then there are a few other things that happen, and you can take a look at the plot here and see, what's going on in this particular opera. It's a typical Baroque opera with, little aria things and dances, and there's a prologue. It's in a prologue in 5 acts, and the prologue is about all the gods doing what the gods do and making some sort of analogy to the wonderful, fabulous monarch, the reigning monarch, and how wonderful everything is because of the reigning monarch. And then they tell the mythological story, and that's the deal. It's very pretty. It's a very typical Baroque opera, and the recitative / aria things are quite short. There are some lovely ensembles, trios and duos and whatnot. It flows beginning to end with continuous music quite beautifully. And the performance under Hervé Niquet with Le Concert Spirituel. Oh my goodness, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And there's a reason it's beautiful, and that's one of the primary reasons I'm talking about this with you now. It's on the Alpha label. There's the Alpha thing, right? It's on Alpha, but the Ariane is sung by Véronique Jean. She's fabulous. No, she's not. It's not. She's the nymph of the Seine, and she's also Union. Pardon me. And then there's Judith van Wanrou as Ariane. Pardon me. And we've got Marie Perbost as La Gloire. There's always the glory is associated with the monarch. And Hélène Carpentier is Terpsichore, and a few other things. Everyone's got multiple roles. Matthias Vidal, Mathieu Lecroix, David Witzak. Okay, fine. People you don't know about and probably don't care about. They all sound fine. They really do. And it's just a performance of great energy and warmth and melodic charm, and the dances have lots of rhythm and verve, and it's splendiferously recorded. But the reason I wanted to bring this up, and the real reason to do it, is because this opera, well, my good friend up in Montreal, Christophe Huss, who's the music critic for Le Devoir, the newspaper in Montreal, did an interview this was done in connection with the Baroque Center of Versailles. And the artistic director is a guy named, let me get this straight because I'm going to make a mess of it if I don't take a look. Let's see, here it is. I have to get his name. There we go. Benoit Dratvitzky. Yes, so Benoit Dratvitzky is the head of the Baroque Music Center of Versailles. And he gave an interview to Monsieur Huss, a link to which I have below this very video, so you can look at it yourself. It's in French, of course, but you can translate it easily enough into English if you really care. And it's fascinating. Oh, it's so fascinating. Because what Monsieur Dratvitzky has discovered, and what these people all do, is that the period instrument movement, at least when it comes to French Baroque opera, has been full of crap. The crap is he's discovered that, first of all, they did not have a harpsichord continuo playing constantly. They left it out, or he leaves it out whenever they have the dances, which makes so much sense. Does anybody want a harpsichord banging along during a tambourin or a bourrée or a gigue constantly without interruption throughout the whole opera? No. They used a theorbo or something, but he said, we know what instruments they used. We know what the constitution of the orchestra was, and nobody does it that way. They just futz around with it according to the quote-unquote rules of the period instrument movement, and that it has to be done the way, or however they want to do it, which of course is, also an issue. And someone who he particularly takes to task is William Christie, which I think is tremendously amusing, really amusing. And he said, of course, they had normal operatic voices. That's what the human voice sounds like. I mean, that's what they sound like. They have more in common with 19th century opera. He said, so Veronique Jean, he says, she should sing full out. She's an opera singer. This is an opera. Sing it like an opera. Yeah, right, exactly. And of course they used vibrato, and of course they did all these things. So the result is that this sounds really yummy. I mean, it's obviously period instrument-like because you've got oboes doubling the violins all the time, and you've got, period instruments which sound like the way they sound, but they can sound warm. He said it should sound warm. He says it should sound pleasing. Ha! There's a thought. It just blows my mind. And I have predicted for quite some time that what goes around comes around, and that for quite some time we are just waiting for when they discover, because this all has to have scholarly sanction. I mean, common sense never enters into the equation, does it? I mean, really, it doesn't. They have to decide that, yes, it's okay to play with warmth, with feeling, to have full-fledged voices, to have dynamic range. But wow, what a difference it makes. I mean, this is exciting. It's just exciting. It just flows. It goes like the wind. And it comes with a beautiful book. Alfred does lovely work with a, livrette. Here you've got the livrette, so you can see the words. And it's just quite tremendously wonderful. But a couple of things come to mind, first of all. First is this strange necessity that these people, Mr. Dratwitsky and these other people have, that, oh yes, you have to be able to point to some sort of scholarly thing. What about just common sense musicality? Of course, you do not want to have a harpsichord banging along in places where it sounds terrible. Of course, you don't want it to be orally fatiguing, not to our ears or to the ears of people at the time. Of course, this isn't supposed to be an austere penance, the sound of the orchestra. Sure, you'd use vibrato. Sure, you'd add warmth where the emotional content of the music requires it and seems to demand it. Of course, voices are voices. I mean, you can't tell me that there was a particular voice that sang this stuff, a type of soprano. I mean, the soprano was just as likely to be the mistress of some nobleman, and her voice was whatever it was. I mean, let's face it, the idea that today's singers have to have, do something to themselves. They have to sound like Emma Kirkby or strange countertenors, whatever. Of course, that's not what they did. It's just commonsensical. They used what they had. They did what they did. Whatever sounded good, they tried. And it was all governed by great practicality and musical common sense. And that has not changed. That really hasn't changed over the past few hundred years, because the past few hundred years, it's the wink of an eye. It's nothing, in terms of like geological time, in terms of the aesthetics. The aesthetics of music haven't changed all that much. I mean, it's wonderful that Monsieur Dratwitsky has finally figured that out. But to present that as like a major scholarly discovery, I just say to myself, ay. And what is even more fascinating to me about this thing, of course, is that Monsieur Niquet, who was perfectly happy to go along with the period instrument orthodoxy previously, has now decided that this is perfectly okay. Why? Because some guy did research and told him. What really blows my mind about this whole movement and about what's going on is that you realize that so many performers really have no particular idea about how the music's supposed to go and no special investment in how the music's supposed to go. They just do it so that it sounds different, and they think, okay, that's interesting. I mean, that's cool. It's got to be different because it's got to be different from what we do today. But, did anyone ever stop and say, wait a minute, here's a passage of extreme beauty, extreme emotion that has to be done in a special way. So even if the rules say I should do X, Y, and Z, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go where the music seems to be telling me it wants to go. I mean, how many of these people have really strong views about it? How many of them have really done their own homework? Really done their homework. I mean, really studied the works to internalize the music, and then done that in connection with this scholarly apparatus. No, they just let themselves be told what to do because they have to go from one project to the next project, from one concert to the next concert. They're all traveling around. They don't have time Do they really have time to get to know this music? I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying this to trash Niquet. I'm not. It's a general phenomenon. I just wonder how much any of these people really know or care. But this is, those are just thoughts. This is a very beautiful performance of a rare work. It's quite short. For a prologue in 5 acts, it's only about 2 hours long, right? 2 hours and a little bit, perhaps. 126 minutes and 25 seconds. So it's, the arias, such as they are, they're sort of ariosos, because it's French opera, are quite short. Nothing is longer than maybe a couple of minutes, or maybe 3 minutes max. Even the overtures are, the March with Fugato thing, French overture, they're quite peppy and zippy. The whole thing is just characterized by great tunefulness and energy. And so I enjoy it very much. And what's more, I enjoy the approach, and the singing is wonderful. And it's lovely to hear that sense seems to be coming back. And I say seems to be because, again, there always has to be the scholarly apparatus, which is like a sort of dead weight around everybody's necks in order to justify what they're doing. And it would be so refreshing for someone to just say to me, the music justifies what I'm doing. The situation justifies what I'm doing. The harmony justifies what I'm doing. The fact that people can only tolerate so many hours of harpsichord jangling in the background justifies what I'm doing. It's all common sense. I mean, not all of it is. I understand. Yes, there is going to be scholarship. I don't have any problem with that. But musicality has to also have its say, and sometimes has to override scholarly dogma. That's how you prevent things from becoming dogma, by having talented musicians who trust their musical instincts. And these are very good musicians. They should trust their musical instincts. They really should. And the result will be beautiful music, as it is here. So there you go. Marais, who lived from 1656 to 1728 and wrote a lot of dead cow music for viols. Yeah, a lovely work, an absolutely lovely work. Ariadne et Bacchus on the Alpha label, featuring Hervé Niquet and the Concert Spirituel and the Baroque Center of Versailles. A new moment in the history of Baroque performance and historically informed stuff. Time will tell. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.